Hi everybody, my name is Michael Welton. I'm a mortgage advisor and principal of WPP Financial Services. Today we're with Roger Morris of Precise.
Everybody who's going to listen in now will get a nice cup of coffee or a cup of tea, sit down and just listen, because I think we're in for about 20 minutes, half an hour, hopefully, of some very interesting questions, conversations and responses.
Fantastic. So let's dive straight in then, Roger. So in terms of the applications you're accepting at the moment, are you seeing more limited company or more personal names? What's coming through to you?
So if you think about George Osborne's announcement in Parliament in June 2015, he stated there and then the ultimate withdrawal of the ability to offset interest relief for privately owned buy-to-lets. And that's excluding, obviously, holiday lets that are classed as a business. And that ultimately came into law from April last year, 2020. But it doesn't wash through on a privately owned buy-to-let landlord's tax return until January next year. And what that means, from January 2021, you'll no longer be able to offset interest as we used to do. It's no longer 100% deduction. It's now a reduction in your overall tax liability. And because of this, accountants and specifically tax advisors are now recommending limited companies in certain situations, specifically where you are top rating high rate taxpayers, and you want to be able to maximize the effective efficiency of good qualified tax advice. And because of that, Michael, we are seeing a substantial number of increase in limited company applications and limited company SPV, so specific purpose vehicle applications. So people are now buying properties after getting tax advice in that way. And also it helps as part of your tax advice for inheritance tax and things. So there's a lot of reasons that people would want to own buy-to-lets in a limited company.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing ourselves a lot more inquiries on that side too. So I'm guessing, same as my thoughts on this really, that you don't expect this to change and you think it's just going to be a growing market on that side.
Yeah, I mean, Winston Churchill once says the only constant in life is change itself, and you and I are unable to predict where the market's going. The primary reason for going limited was twofold. One was an easier check to ensure that the landlords who had buy-to-lets paid the taxes on time. So limited companies are easier to be able to check up on that. And then secondly, because the laws just come in, it's about professionalizing the buy-to-let sector. So dinner party landlords seem to have sold up and moved on, but professional landlords have started to buy more properties. So what you're going to have, ultimately, the benefit is a more professional, privately owned housing sector, which houses about 5 million properties. So it's a lot of people, about 8.5 million tenants. And what I think you'll find from this is I can't imagine them moving away from limited companies, because it really does make the overall housing market in the privately owned sector a much better quality sort of solution for people to rent, is my opinion. Right. But we'll have to see.
Absolutely. Like you say, we can't predict what's going to happen. Okay. From a lending point of view, are there a lot more additional risks you face when lending to a limited company compared to a personal name?
No, I would say it's equal. So we will always, when lending to a limited company, will make sure that any of the shareholders or directors would always give us a personal guarantee. So that means you're jointly and severally liable for all the debt, as the same way you would be in personal names, regardless of the percentage of shareholding you have in the business or your position as a director. With the only caveat to that, we will allow directors, shareholders, children under the age of 21 to actually have shares in the property, and they wouldn't have to do personal guarantees, because we see quite a lot of applications now where, in effect, the 100% shareholder could be a 6-month-old baby girl, and the parents want to buy her the first property now. So the parents can be the directors, but the shareholder can be, someone 6 months old. So there's lots of different reasons. But when it comes to the underwriting, The underwriting is the same for personal as well it is for limited. So there's no extra risk accorded to either way.
No extra risk, but I would assume there's additional paperwork to go through because there's another entity involved essentially.
There is. I mean, what we need to do is to establish with Precise Mortgages that limited company specific purpose vehicle has the right SIC codes. Sorry if I'm using lots of industry acronyms, but so you've got limited company, you've got SPV, which is specific purpose vehicle. So that means the limited company is restricted to what it legally can do. Since June 2016, you can't form a limited company without having SIC codes. That's standard industry classification. There's a few hundred of them, but there's one section, a category purely given over to owning buy-to-let properties. So we need to make sure it's got the appropriate SIC codes. It can do what it says on the tin, but it's never been a trading business. And the reason that we do that extra layer security, if you'd say had Michael and Rogers Electrics, which may had some large impending tax liabilities, part of that consequence of maybe that business going bust could take the lender security with it. So we do check in to make sure that the business is within the means of the law and taxes paid. And then the other thing you will have to pay out for, Michael, is independent legal advice. And that's maybe where the extra layer of cost that you wouldn't have on a privately owned buy-to-let.
I'm glad you're bringing some of that up, actually, because we get a lot of queries about why can't I just use the business I've already got running? Why can't I just use the limited company I've got? Where we try to explain you had to go and get a specific code. We explain all those, but obviously go and get advice from your accountant, and he will point you in the right direction and support you. That's up of said limited company.
So that's a really good question, and it is one to think. So let's say we had Michael and Roger Electrics. We've been trading 20 years, the two of us. You were obviously about 6 when you joined, and I was maybe 30, looking at the difference in age. So, so what we've got, right, we've got electrical trading business. We've got, let's say we had £500,000 of surplus cash in there, and it's our director's loan account. In other words, it's our money that we could take out. Now, we could take that 500,000 out, but we'd pay 38.1% dividend tax on that, because if we took it out that amount, we would be top rate taxpayers. That's not very tax efficient. So if we decided to use that deposit to buy buy-to-lets within our trading business, the consequence is that long term, we'd have to keep that trading business running till you and me pass away if we want to keep those buy-to-lets as our retirement fund. What happened if somebody offered to buy that business from us, Michael, which is potentially possible? And what happens if, let's say we went bust, we lose our pension, which is the buy-to-lets in there. So it can be very sensible to keep your buy-to-lets, which is if your long-term retirement fund. And remember, we can take an applicant at the age of 80 and we can do a term for 35 years. So you can be 115 when that mortgage ends. So it's quite a journey. Yeah. So what we're allowed now is what's called an intercompany loan. So a trading business can in effect lend the new limited company SPV a loan. So that could be £500,000. Now the revenue have a procedure for this, and you need to have a loan agreement that confirms how long you're going to lend the money for, so say 35 years. There's no monthly repayment in the majority of the cases, but you must charge an annual interest rate of 2.25%. It's set every April by the revenue, and at the moment it's 2.25. And obviously, if interest rate rises, that would rise. And we're very happy the deposit coming from a loan from a trading business, as long as the limited company SPV shares the same shareholders and directors. So it'd be Roger and Michael on that side, Roger and Michael on the trading business.
Absolutely. That's really interesting, because actually that is another question we've had recently, saying I've got a big chunk of money here. I don't want to take it out and pay personal tax. I want to use that and move it on. And actually from our research, there are only 1 or 2 lenders in the market doing that. And I can see 2 of them on the board behind you there, definitely.
But Michael, that's why you should come to an independent broker like yourself, somebody who's got a great reputation and that will do the work. All these lenders you can't come directly to. we're 100% intermediary because we can't give advice. And it's important that the customer gets independent, qualified advice. And that's why customers should come to you and have those conversations and get the right lender for them. Not literally, you know, if you go into a high street branch, you're only going to get that lender's own products. That's not really a good outcome for customers, which is why we are purely intermediary.
Fantastic. I like the sound of that. That's great, because there's a lot of competition out there. So going on just on that theme a little bit here. So what else is there out there that the borrower needs to watch out for, okay, when they're looking to buy within a limited company as a buy-to-let?
Yeah, so I've been buying now for about 33 years. And what I would say to anybody starting out buying buy-to-let, so anybody who's got buy-to-lets at the moment, is have you seen a tax advisor, not an accountant? Most accountants are not qualified to give any form of tax advice. Neither is a mortgage broker. And often you'll hear, yeah, you rightly shake your head. You'll often hear of landlords saying, I'll go and speak to my accountant. I don't understand why you would. You wouldn't go and speak to an ice cream man or a lollipop lady. Accountants are historians generally. They're not past that tax exam, and they will maybe mess around with tax, but they're not experts. So my first port of call would be to see a tax advisor, then would to have a good accountant, and obviously have a good mortgage broker. A mortgage broker is unable to be able to tell you whether you can buy in personal names or limited company. And that's where a good tax advisor will come from. And it's about understanding to make sure that you plan your journey. Because if your aspirations to grow a great property portfolio, you're better off having the right structure now than having to restructure at a great expense later down the line.
Yeah, absolutely right. Really, really good comments there, because you're absolutely right about the tax advisor. As a mortgage advisor, we can't give advice on tax under any circumstances. An accountant, they may not be the most specialist in that area. So you're absolutely right, and I think you should always get the right advice from the right specialist. So, okay, so moving on slightly. So in terms of one savings bank, they're a lender. As a lender, you don't differentiate on price between limited and personal lending. Why do you think that is for the other lenders? Because I see it really often that much higher fees when it comes to buy-to-let in a limited company versus personal names. And I get the question all the time, and I can only assume it's that they're looking at it as a risk perspective, but that might not be necessarily the case.
I think what you've got lenders that will do residential mortgages that play in the buy-to-let space. Absolutely. And you get lenders that have really got it flowing through the DNA. And it might be people who are watching this recording for the first time who've dealt with a mortgage broker, shall we say, that wasn't not very knowledgeable within the buy-to-let world. And I think that's the difference when dealing with someone like yourself. You are an expert within that specialist market. So it's like picking a good broker. Make sure you pick a good one. When it comes to lending, we often, first of all, will hear that why is limited company lending more expensive than standard? We often can come across. So if you've got a very low loan to value, less than 60%, there is high street banks that can offer some really good rates, purely and simply for certain types of landlords. But if your LTV is above 60%, and certainly if you want 80 or 85%, because Kent Reliance can go to 85% on buy-to-let, then our rates will be at the same price, whether it be in personal ownership or limited companies, because we understand limited company is a tax wrapper and offers us no more risk. However, it can work out better for a lender because the income ratio that's needed on a buy-to-let is only at 125% in a limited company, and it can be a lot higher in personal names. Yeah. So it's just trying to give the right outcome for the customer when possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting there. You mentioned 80 and 85% because they're kind of coming back into the market recently. Don't often see many people asking because the rates seem to be a little bit higher than the 75%, which is what most of my clients seem to go for. But it's all about the risk, isn't it, really?
It can be a journey. So 85% is common where it's a HMO. So if you're buying a HMO at 85% and you're an investor who wants to build a portfolio, your mindset can be the following: because you've got the increased rent, we'll pay the increased interest rate. And the way property prices are going now, Michael, 5-7 years, your equity position may have gone up, and that landlord then could refinance to another lender at a lower LTV and get a better rate the next time. Yeah. Again, that's subject to equity positions and prices going up. But again, as a landlord myself who's trying to buy a lot of properties, buying an 85% now on a higher rate, but 10 years from now, you could be down at 60% with the current growth in property prices.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that actually does lead on really nicely to my final question, actually. Are your thoughts on the buy-to-let market over the next 12 months? Where do you see it going?
I think up to now, certainly in the last 6 months, landlords have been excluded from the purchase market because of the sheer increase in demand for residential purchases because of lockdown. Once the stamp duty holiday ends at the end of September, where there is no benefit, we'll see the buy-to-let market returning. A lot of landlords have exited the marketplace. There's been an increase in the divorce rate, an increase in the birth rate, making rental properties being in much more demand than ever before. So every one of my buy-to-let properties, and I'm touching wood, is fully occupied at the moment with a waiting list. So I've never seen a better time personally for a landlord to be able to buy at the moment. So I see the opportunities for landlords October onwards and into next year being a strong market if you buy the right properties in the right area with the right rental demand. So having a garden, maybe 2 or 3 bedrooms, good broadband, and the ability to get that all-important desk somewhere in the house that doesn't maybe spoil the use of the property.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Actually, I said that was my final question. I have one more because something just popped into mind. What are your thoughts on, through the limited company, having individuals in there that's maybe not related? So at the moment, I've got 2 friends that are looking to build a property portfolio. Is that a wise decision to make, or do you see future issues, and or is it just the same as running any business, I suppose?
Yeah, what I would say to anyone, you could just have, like me and you, we could set up a limited company. We could have Emma, the 3 of us could set up. That's not a problem. With Precise, it's 4 shareholders, 4 directors. With Kent Reliance, it's different. It's just about the directors for them, but we can have as many shareholders as we want in the background. So understanding that people will friends, you've got a plumber and an electrician wanting to buy together makes sense. The only thing I would say is when dealing with setting up a limited company, it's worth getting legal advice. What happens if you fall out or one of the shareholders, directors wants to sell their share? So if you can work out how you would exit the partnership or what the mechanism would be for me to buy you or you buy me out, get that understood. And then you've worked out both the pros and cons of setting up a limited company partnership.
Absolutely, and that will come to actually seeing your financial advisor as well, whether it's a mortgage and protection advisor or full IFA, how that works, because there are things, mechanisms that you put in place, such as key directors protection, a key man, shareholders protection, those kind of things, to make sure in the event of the worst case scenario, then there is a mechanism in place to make sure everybody's having the right share at the right time at whatever stage they are in their life.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. Statistically, we're likely to die at least once during our life, 100%. And it's worth having. I have a big life policy on my portfolio because you don't want to leave your wife or husband with that real pain and problem. And the cost of it, if you actually work it out against your profit, it's worth having. So if there's anybody else listening out there, really understand the primary reason of having a buy-to-let portfolio is for your pension. And if one of you was to leave, having a life policy to be able to pay off the debt and make the end result to the surviving partner, I think, a much better outcome. So again, speak to Michael on that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks, Roger. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Take care, guys.